Let's speak to Carrie Clarke, Director of Genspect UK, about her thoughts on all of this. Carrie, great to have you on the programme.
Thank you so much for having me, Alex.
I'm so fed up with hearing all of this nonsense. It's insulting as a woman. Frankly, I think when men keep their beards and put on a dress and say, call me a woman, it's no better than someone putting on blackface and pretending they're of a different race. It's insulting. And normally they play along with these really quite misogynistic tropes of what a woman should be. Ow, it's my period. Ow, look at me, I've fallen over. But rather than it just irritating me and thinking it's a form of mental illness, it is dangerous in a medical setting, isn't it?
It is, and it's time for employers to get with the programme about this. We've had a series of court cases. NHS Fife versus Peggy is going on right now, in which tens of thousands of pounds of taxpayer money is being used to defend these insane cases where employers try to compel the speech of their employees. They don't have the right to do that. It's not kind and respectful to compel people's speech. And it's particularly dangerous for women and girls for whom sex recognition is really, really important.
Do you think that there does need to be, let's play devil's advocate, do you think there does need to be some sort of carving out of a space, some guidelines for the odd character that is a man who would rather be a woman? Or should it just be, look, get real, that might be how you feel, and we're not going to make your life difficult over it, but you know, broader society doesn't work that way and you've got to adapt?
Well, the other thing is that I don't think this is kind or respectful to trans-identified people either, and I think before people transition and take these huge steps, they need to be made aware that the whole of society is not obliged to recognise their self-identity and that they're going to encounter people who have different beliefs about this subject who might not be happy using preferred pronouns. And that's something that they need to discuss before people undertake these steps.
What on earth did all these people with gender dysphoria, and I kind of feel that there weren't many of them on Earth, it seems to have mushroomed and come out of the floorboards everywhere. But what did they do before the whole sort of pronoun thing came about? I mean, were they sort of crying in the corner of their bedrooms going, oh no, they didn't call me she and her? I mean, how did people survive before the pronouns?
Well, no, I don't think they were. I think they accepted that asking somebody to use your preferred pronouns is a matter of, it's a one-to-one personal thing. It's not something that you can have a policy about. You know, it's so different for an individual to request to somebody that they know quite well, would you mind doing this, than it is to have your employer, who has so much institutional power over you, whether you earn a living, compelling you to use these pronouns in your workplace.
You said earlier on in this interview that, you know, these authorities, you know, these public bodies need to get with the programme. Things have changed and they need to drop all of this nonsense and stop forcing this stuff on employees. You've also written a brilliant piece on Substack and a report about puberty blockers and the fact that detransitioners were never consulted. Talk to me about that.
So it doesn't look like it, Alex. So I'm the director of Genspect UK, and Genspect run a project called Beyond Trans, which provides subsidised therapy to people who've detransitioned. We're actually the only specialist service in the UK for detransitioners because the NHS doesn't have a pathway to look after them. So if the puberty blocker trial team were looking for somebody to talk to about detransition, we kind of thought they might have reached out to us. We thought we might have heard from them. But as far as we can tell, none of our service users have been consulted in the design of this trial. And that's absolutely outrageous because detransitioners probably have more than any other group to say about the outcomes of medical transition.
What is the rate of detransitioning? Because I just want to ask you about this, because my sort of potted theory is that somewhere down the line there's going to be a big scandal in about 10 years' time or so, where a whole cohort of people say we've been essentially brainwashed, led up the garden path by people who should have had our safeguarding as their #1 interest. We were forced down a medical route when we might have just been confused as pubescents, or we might have had autism, or we're just gay and we felt like we didn't quite know what we were doing, but it was sort of pushed upon us so much that we were born in the wrong body. We did it, and now we've mutilated ourselves, and therefore we're going to have, you know, multiple court cases against people in the education profession, the medical profession, against governments even, to pay for the damage that's been done. What rate of people who go through medical gender change do then detransition, and what recourse do they have to hold people accountable for what happened to them? Or basically, is no one accountable but themselves?
Yeah, it's incredibly difficult for us to tell what detransition rates are because the data collection and the follow-up of patients who've been treated with this incredibly experimental treatment has been absolutely appalling. So we know that it takes somewhere between 8 to 11 years for transition regret to manifest. So we really need long-term follow-up. And the NHS hasn't made any effort to do that. They were supposed to complete a data linkage study that would have found out what had happened to the roughly 2,000 children that were prescribed puberty blockers in NHS gender clinics, but there's been no progress on that. They're going to push ahead with a new trial in which they're going to medicalise a whole new cohort of young people, and we haven't even found out what happened to the last lot.
And I mean, what you work with these people directly? What are their feelings? Are they, are they angry when it comes to perhaps how easily it was to be pushed down a medical pathway?
Oh, I think they feel so betrayed. I think they feel so betrayed. We know from surveys with detransitioners that around 3/4 of them don't return to the original doctor that set them on this medical pathway because they just feel so angry and traumatized about dealing with the medical profession. So the fact that the NHS is getting ready to make more detransitioners without even providing for the casualties of the last experiment it did is just a real betrayal to the people that they've already hurt.
And when someone has gone down, I suppose it's different in different cases, gone down that route of changing their gender and much later feel remorseful about it, how easy is it to detransition?
It's not easy, and people who detransition have really complex physical and mental health needs, and they're left navigating incredibly complicated situations in day-to-day life. If you're a woman who's taken testosterone for a very long time and you present as male and you want to revert back to your birth sex, you suddenly find yourself being read as male in public, having to explain to everybody, that no, actually, I'm female, facing this challenge everywhere. It's really complicated. And when we talk about employers as well, like the NHS, there's all of this focus on people who identify as trans, but detransitioners are employees as well. Parents of gender distressed kids are employees. Children of transgender people are employees. And they all have strong feelings about this subject as well. Employers don't seem to take into consideration the fact that there are these other groups they need to be considered in policy making.
And working with these people and looking at some of those heartbreaking stories of people whose lives are irrevocably changed after having transition treatments, is there any space for transition treatments to be offered at all, or would you rather see them essentially wiped out?
So Genspect's position is that there are no children who should be given irreversible sex change treatments, puberty blockers, or cross-sex hormones. It's more complicated when we talk about adults. I think if we're going to have a conversation about preventing people from doing things over the age of majority, then we probably need to talk about whether 18 is the right age for that. And it's a really, really big conversation. But the main thing is that this is not healthcare. It's not evidence-based, it's not safe, and it's not ethical. So in our view, these are radical body modification procedures. If adults want to have radical body modification procedures, that's up to them. But it shouldn't be provided as healthcare, and it certainly shouldn't be paid for out of the public purse.
Carrie, thank you ever so much for talking to us. Carrie Clarke, director there of Genspect UK, doing incredible work with people who are detransitioning after what I think is going to be a big future scandal against the NHS medicalising a mental health condition.